I want to celebrate Black people who vote and those who encouraged us to vote, as well as Black women especially. It would be easy to join the others who still, attempt to provide an accurate explanation of the madness we faced here in Washington on January 6th at the United States Capitol, and just have regrets about what could have been if only certain things had happened. Now, to that subject, for the time being, I'll only say that because of the current political climate and incessant cultural conflict, I became a sounding board for the expression of legitimate fears for the inauguration day, safety of Vice President Kamala Harris and President Joe Biden. And many of us wanted to attend the inauguration, but we could not. But you know, Black women, we always adjust to whatever the situation is. And many times it's a struggle for us, but we still do it. Now, I want to celebrate a lot of the activists in that election, and particularly Black women who did so much. We always have the highest percent of women who are voting in any of the elections that impact us. So anytime we see these women, we need to thank them for what they're doing. People were and still are having a right to be concerned about what's going on. But as soldiers and activists for our people, we cannot afford to be paralyzed for fear. We've got to continue to work and to do things, often through women in our community. We must not, however, allow those concerns to overtake our excitement of the election of our sister, Kamala Harris, now Vice President, so that we can continue to take the next step to what we need to do. We need to hold them responsible. You know, sometimes we elect people and we don't hold them responsible. And that's not their fault, because a lot of people are in front of them, getting their attention, getting the things that they want out there. And we know how hard we work to make the changes of the guard. And that did happen this year. But now it's time for us to spend all of our time celebrating, because other elections are coming up, including in some of your areas. They may be coming up soon. So let's stay busy. Let's do business with one another. Let's be in unity and do all of the things that our community needs us to do. For many, we've heard laudatory acknowledgement of the exemplary role we've played in most recent elections and many other elections, as we often do. As we congratulate our collective efforts and support the Biden-Harris administration, let us remember others who did monumental things that are also worthy of remembering. A person receiving great acclaim for her impact on the 2020 elections, of course, was Stacey Abrams, and rightly so. She came into national prominence in 2018 in the gubernatorial election in Georgia. Now, I can very well relate to what happened to her, since I ran for the United States Congress in my home state of Louisiana some years ago, and a similar thing happened. But I still pick myself up every day, just as Stacey did, and move right on, knowing that there are many things in our community to be resolved. Unable to be acknowledged as the winner when I ran for office, I just continue to do the things that my community needs. And we're so proud of Stacey for doing the same thing, because she didn't stop serving her community. She organized Fair Fight, and she undertook developing a network of attorneys to challenge specious changes to election laws and establish voter education and registration initiatives. She and her team organized a massive Get Out the Vote program. And we need to do that in every election if we're going to make progress in our community. And what if we just decided one half of what she did in other states where leaders do not represent our interests? We could move from Texas back across Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, then cross over Georgia and move on into Florida, up to South Carolina and North Carolina. And it doesn't matter what we want to do. Even if we wanted some economic developments, we would be able to do that. Now, another significant effort in 2020 was by LaTosha Brown. And we have to remember all the work that LaTosha and her people did, and people in cities all across this country. When we see each other, let's just congratulate each other for the successes we had this year. But let's not stop there. Let's move on to work, not only for women, but for our sons, our spouses, and all in our community. We know the truth, but few outside the beloved community will agree that throughout the history of our nation, Black people, especially Black women, have been found near the center of most struggles and most successes in our nation. Black women have never faltered in meeting our challenges. We challenge Black men to join us at the top. Just think of all that we can do if we just work together. Thank you and God bless.
Now introducing Erica Pulley Hayes.
Thank you, and good morning. It's an honor to join this year's Zora Neale Hurston Festival. I first learned of this festival many years ago when I still lived in New Jersey. A good friend and I talked about visiting Orlando to attend. She and I were always seeking cultural enriching opportunities near and far, so it is refreshing to now live here and participate in this annual tribute to one of the central figures in America's Black history. Like many organizations, the pandemic forced the organizers of this festival to adapt, but that adaptation will hopefully expand its reach to new audiences. This year represents another milestone in African American progress. Just a week ago, we watched the first woman become Vice President of the United States, and she happens to be a Black woman. Kamala Harris represents how far we've come, especially when you consider every struggle of generations of women before her. When I study Zora, I see a woman who lived before her time. She attended a prestigious university, was a central figure of the Harlem Renaissance, and made significant contributions to American literature. I read that she believed in self-reliance, but she
Hurston, how are you?
I read that she believed in self-reliance and she had her fair share of financial challenges. So it is fitting that on this day, the festival continue its economic forum for African American women. I represent WMFE, Orlando's only independent community-based media outlet delivering timely news and information. We exist to educate our community with information that enlightens audiences on the issues facing our region and our country. We do this for mission, not money, and hope that our service earns your trust, your interest, your participation, and support. But our goal is to strengthen civic life by inspiring and empowering you to be active citizens, make informed decisions, and work together to build community that offers a quality of life for everyone. WMFE has been an active member of the Orlando market for 40 years. About a decade ago, we made a commitment to journalism to give voice to the people, cover stories of interest and relevance to them, and raise awareness about the challenges they face. Over the past year, we've tirelessly covered this pandemic, the positivity rates, challenges of testing, and access to the vaccine. We've covered the protests and held conversations with our civic leaders about police reform and racial justice. We also held conversations with voters and non-voters along the I-4 corridor leading up to the most historic election of our time. And we tried to keep our community entertained during the early days of the pandemic when folks were sheltering in place by giving our local artists a platform to connect with audiences in lieu of public performances. We bring you space news, environmental and climate news, and you can always turn to 90.7 to hear the latest information during hurricanes and statewide emergencies. In addition to the content we share, we serve to connect community members with each other. We spotlight the work of other nonprofits working toward the common good, and we promote local businesses by providing opportunities to message their brands on air. We're moving into a new phase, one focused on solutions. So when you're looking for a media partner, consider WMFE. We are here to serve you, to give voice to your causes, support your missions, engage with you, and promote opportunity throughout our region. Thank you for having me, and I look forward to connecting with you all soon. Stay safe.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ife Williams, for your comments and reminding us to be engaged here in the United States. And to you, Erica Pulley-Hayes, the General Manager and CEO for the local affiliate of National Public Radio. It is now my pleasure to have us resume our panels, and I want to introduce moderator Dr. Mary Conway Dato-on, Professor of International Business and Social Entrepreneurship at the George D. and Harriet W. Cornell Chair, Crummer Graduate School of Business, Rollins College, here in Winter Park, Florida.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for that introduction. It is a pleasure for me to be here and to be able to moderate this presentation as we talk about the entrepreneurial development. I'd like to take just a moment to introduce our rather intimidating and awesome panelists. The first is Dr. McCauley, and she is an Associate Dean for Academic Programs in the Wilson College of Textiles in Northern Carolina State University. McCauley is an internationally recognized industrial engineer, researcher in the development of mathematical models, ergonomics, biomechanics, and a leadership in STEM. She's an energetic and impactful keynote speaker, as well as an award-winning educator on a mission to empower others to succeed in STEM education, career, and innovations. And Dr. McCauley, if you'll give me just 1 second before we start with your 10 minutes of presentation, I do just want to mention our next speaker and introduce her as well.
Absolutely.
Okay?
Absolutely.
All right.
Thank you.
So Dr. Awosika is the chairperson of the Access Bank and PLC former permanent secretary in the Federal Ministries of Internal Affairs, Science and Technology and Power, the federal government of Nigeria. Dr. Awosika is an accomplished administrator with over 3 decades of experience in public sector governance. In addition to having been appointed to a number of finance-related assignments, she sits on several boards, including the Josephine Consulting Limited. Welcome from Nigeria, Doctor.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you. What we're going to do is spend about 10 minutes hearing from each of our panelists, and from there, we'll have a 20-minute moderated conversation where I'll ask a few questions of our panelists, and then we'll open it up for question and answer from our attendees today. So I do have the question and answer box open and ready, but let's start with you, Dr. McCauley.
Thank you so much, Dr. Conway. It's certainly a pleasure to be here, to be a part of this event. The Zora Festival is near and dear to my heart, as is collaboration, and particularly in the areas of innovation and entrepreneurship. As you mentioned, I have been a professor at the University of Central Florida. I spent 27 years there. Perhaps you didn't mention that, but am now at North Carolina State University. But all of this time, I have also been very engaged in innovation and entrepreneurial opportunities. And I find that that's an area where we as women and people of color can have a lot more autonomy than we can in some of the corporations. And that's not to say that we shouldn't continue to strive in those spaces and those places. But as we think about the innovation and the entrepreneurial space, it presents a lot of opportunities for us. And we were asked to share some guiding principles in terms of developing oneself as an entrepreneur or helping others to develop as entrepreneurs. And I think that's very important, because even if you're inside an organization, that entrepreneurial mindset will be effective at helping you grow and develop within an organization. Those folks are often referred to as entrepreneurs, where you have that mindset of being innovative and creative and looking for ways to solve problems that haven't been traditionally utilized. So in order to develop in that way, there's so many resources available today. And I always tease, I love when I have an opportunity to speak with a group of young folks, and I ask them how many of them know what a card catalog is. And so many people under 30 have never even seen a card catalog. And so we have all this information available to us today. And so It really does break my heart when I see people suffering for a lack of information because it is readily available. So if you're interested in developing yourself as an entrepreneur, and quite frankly, I don't know why anyone wouldn't be, whether you want to succeed in a large corporate environment or as a small business owner, educational environment, but I would encourage you to get formal and informal education on entrepreneurial development. That means reading materials that are available, attending webinars, attending meetings like this one, but also connecting with folks. We're so connected as a global society today. When you look at the folks you can reach out to on LinkedIn, do LinkedIn learning, understanding resources that are available to you in your local communities. And now that we're in this COVID era, I think one of the best things that came from this is access to people, opportunities, and information, because now we have been forced to not require people to be there physically. And so utilize the new resources to connect to environments, to peoples, to training, to workshops, to certifications, to help shore up your entrepreneurial skills. Because one of the things we know that 56% of professionally held jobs are held by women, and yet only 11% of executives at Fortune 500 companies are women. And of course, and it'll bring a tear to your eye if we start quoting statistics on women of color and Black women in these leadership roles. So what we've seen is women are starting businesses at about 1.5 times the national average. So that means that more women are starting businesses than men. But the challenge oftentimes is we don't see these become multi-million-dollar enterprises or international enterprises, and they can be. I mean, there are a number of resources available so that you can develop a scalable business utilizing those resources. And always say, when you want to start a business, I spent 2.5 years at the National Science Foundation as a program director, and there I led the Innovation Corps, or the I-Corps program, and that methodology has become utilized worldwide. And what it does, it teaches us how to take a concept and how to take that concept from an idea or technical idea that we've developed either in our labs or working on a project, and create a business around it. So identifying what are the pains or the problems that your idea can solve, or what are the gains. It may not necessarily solve a problem, but can be accelerate achievement in a particular space. And so that's the I-Corps program. And I will tell you, we gave people $50,000 for a team to evaluate a concept. I want you to hear that. The government giving you $50,000 to evaluate your idea to see if you can turn it into a business. And I can't tell you how few people of color came through that program. So in my 2.5 years, I was on a mission to increase the presence of people of color in this space. And so if you've got a concept that you want to see developed, and we know that over 30%, about 32% of businesses owned by African Americans are in the healthcare and the social science space. So you can have a concept that you want to positively impact a situation or an environment on an international basis. If you're US based and you have an international partner, you all can apply for this I-Corps program. So please look up National Science Foundation I-Corps program. And that's the national program that gives the 50,000, but then there are regional programs in 99 sites, or we call those sites, in 99 universities across the country where you can get introduced to it. So please understand some of these resources. Other resources that are available to you if you actually want to step out and start that business include incubators, okay? And many startup spaces, maker spaces. So understand the resources that are available to you. And I will say this, if you're a leader in a community and you're interested in starting an entrepreneurial ecosystem, where we consider an ecosystem an environment that has multiple resources to help an entrepreneur succeed. Look in your community, see what resources are available. I find so often we're struggling and working individually, and we don't come together and let our collective strength be that resource for entrepreneurs in our community. And once again, now that we're in this virtual age, it's much easier to connect with folks. So identify 3 to 4 resources in your community if you don't presently have that. And you can even create a virtual entrepreneurial ecosystem. And so making that available, understanding, connecting, and then utilize other resources like the US Africa Business Center, the U.S. Africa Trade Council. And so there are a number of resources if you are interested in establishing these international collaborations. And I, again, am totally open and available to anyone who may want to chat with me. I would love to see more of us working together between the U.S. and Africa. And I will say this, as we look to see how we can more positively impact the world, one of the greatest experiences I had in my life is when I spent a year with the U.S. Department of State as a Jefferson Science Fellow. And in that role, I worked in the President's Emergency Program for AIDS Relief, or the PEPFAR office. And a part of my task as an industrial engineer was to try to understand how we could introduce innovation and technology into the HIV and AIDS healthcare service delivery process. And the reason for that is because even though we're still, as a State Department, providing considerable financial resources to many African nations for AIDS relief, we recognize that the population explosion that is expected in the coming decades makes this not sustainable. And so what we wanted to do as a PEPFAR office is understand, and these are applying just basic industrial engineering principles that I learned when I got my first industrial engineering degree over 30 years ago. But applying these principles and understanding how to support HIV and AIDS healthcare service delivery workers in a manner that makes this more efficient, more sustainable, and more innovative. And I will tell you, I was never more aware of the impact of my engineering knowledge than in that 1 year. I went to Africa 3 times, went to Malawi twice, went to Zambia, to really study this process and really began to gain an understanding of how we can use technology and innovation to more positively impact thousands of lives. So ladies, there are so many opportunities out there for us to have that kind of impact. There are so many needs that our skills and collective gifts can address. So I welcome an opportunity to be a part of any efforts to address that, to support you, to direct you to resources that I may know of. And thank you again, Mrs. Nathiri, and everyone here for an opportunity to participate in this panel. So back to you, Dr. Mary.
Wow, thank you so much. Really inspirational. And you're absolutely right. I mentioned only a very small part of your entire very impressive background. So I thank you for reminding us of the local connection that you have here to UCF. And I just want to applaud you for talking about the entrepreneurial mindset. And I know we're going to come back, and I'm looking for some questions around folks about how to build that mindset. And you mentioned what resources we might want to access and some suggestions on those. And of course, through this collaboration and through the amazing Zora Festival, we are building this collective, and keeping that active virtually, in person, and all those things. So thank you, Dr. McCauley. Absolutely. And speaking of the virtual connections and how we can create a bond globally, right? I want to ask Dr. Awosika if she'll take about 10 minutes and speak to us about her work and her vision. Dr. Awosika.
Thank you, Mary. Good afternoon, all. It's about evening time now in Nigeria. And first, we'd like to congratulate Zora 2021 promoters, and to thank you for inviting me on this platform. It's quite an exciting place to be at this point in time in the globe. The pandemic, and I like the way you chose pandemic and injustice. The pandemic highlights injustice, and there's no better time to bring those two keywords to the forefront than now. And what I have heard this morning has so encouraged me that the co-speakers from now until now have been driving the resources are available. So God left no lack anywhere in the world. And so it's quite very interesting building the right partnership between Africa and the America, 2 large continents with varied resources and different vacuums. So we're going to have to fill these vacuums with entrepreneurship development. Pamela just spoke about skills, knowledge, These are the things that are needed basically as a two-pronged approach for entrepreneurship development. There are other factors that will come into play, like the owner's ability, the capabilities, the monetary aspect, money leadership, the initiative, and all of this. These are the factors that we need to bring to bear. So I would like to hinge my practical experience on identifying processes that need to be put in place in order for the partnership between Africa and America to make a meaning amongst the women. And the choice of women is very good because it helps to quickly drive results. But the framework for getting these results has to be in place. I've had one framework this afternoon. I can't quickly remember the speaker, and that is setting up a Facebook for continuity when we live here. So we have spoken a lot. That's one framework. I also had a framework of trust, and I'm very excited to hear that because that's one great vacuum between Africa and the America and other parts of the world as well. The other thing I will add to trust, which is working for us, is goodwill. These two major economies are needed for entrepreneurship development. Whom do you trust? What do you trust that person has capacity to do? And what is the trust on the other side on the person's ability? How can you build the ecosystem along their culture, along the things that they are receptive about? How prepared are you to be able to show goodwill, to learn of the people as they learn of you, so that both can be on a clear understanding on a platform that they can work on and be able to yield results. Against this background, I'm saying identify opportunities. Many have been identified today. More can be identified. Be ready to create wealth. Entrepreneurship development creates wealth. There are essential processes like the planning, the organizing, the operations, the risk. The risk. And the pandemic has shown that there's a great risk across board, but technology has also helped us to continue to work even when the pandemic is on. Prior to the pandemic, we've had other risks like malaria. To be on the lighter side and just make you joke, when you want to see areas that keep their resources and they are now sort of finding a way to develop businesses from the resources, they will tell you that malaria prevented the white man from getting there. So you know what I mean? In other words, if they will get malaria, it will kill, so they will quickly leave the people. But as we speak today, the world is beyond that. The pandemic has made it a reality that we can solve problems when we all have need. The vaccine is there now. We can solve problems when we all have the needs and we see that the need is common to mankind. So between America and Nigeria, we have commonalities. Commonalities starting from the human resource. For example, in my country, we have over 200 million citizens. We have varied resources. They line up from the human resource to the mineral resource to the agricultural resource, and so on and so forth. I have a book of them. I have a book of resources in 9,955 words. The words are equivalent to districts in America, so to say, or in the UK. So you have resources in every of this area. And when you were talking about shea butter, a whole zone in Nigeria are producing shea butter. But is the standard up to AGOA standard that they can export to America? They need skills. They need technology. So these are the areas. In the bank where I am as chairman, by the grace of God, we have what we call the Women Initiative. We developed the Women Initiative in order to capture this very important gender. Important in the sense that we had noticed that even the small funding that we have given for entrepreneurship development, particularly in trading, women have paid back about 95%, where the men have less percentage in their payback efforts. So we developed the W initiative. So the W initiative is fostering economic empowerment development. There is a visible framework for this initiative, and we have been able to lay out the plans, the projections for different businesses, and Access Bank, if you permit me to say so, on this platform, has long been recognized as a powerful potential for women development. And we are very, 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 very ready to partner with this Zora 21 initiative, as we have several branches across Africa. Our customer base is over 14 million women across 7 countries in Africa, namely Nigeria, Zambia, Rwanda, Sierra Leone, Gambia, DRC, and we have also in Ghana, Congo, and Mozambique, and we are now developing one in South Africa. So we have a base, we have an ecosystem, we have a framework that can allow us to take off in partnership, because financial and monetary leadership is key in entrepreneurship development, whether it's in supporting knowledge gain or supporting skills acquisition. We can do all this online in partnership with the people like Pamela, who spoke very passionately about it, and others. And even Mary, in your university, I was talking to the professor in charge of business school in Lagos, where I also am a lecturer in business school, coming behind you people, but just putting my experience into use. Those are the kind of things that we need to identify and begin to work. We need to begin to do the work. We need to begin to put action to the work. And we need to begin to build the goodwill from this platform. The goodwill from this platform. We start, somebody said 1 woman to 10 women. Yes, that's a good beginning, but we can even do faster than that when we use existing framework and begin to see that we're on top of it, not necessarily for our own gains, but for the development of women. Now, I want to emphasize not necessarily for our own gains, because I've come to experience the fact that when you think about your gain, you can't travel far. But you have to think to have an impact on the women. And when you think about having an impact on the women, eventually it comes back to you. And we must be able to have a mindset that as we move forward, we are moving forward to move different groups of women. There are women in high tech, can be easily fast-tracked. There are women lower down there that don't need much, but need you and I to skill them up and to help them with the technology that is easy for them to use and be able to go on and develop their trade, to be able to go on and do micro industries, to be able, can you imagine women doing toothpicks? This country, Nigeria, imports toothpick to a huge level of amount, and it's ridiculous. And there are many things you can list like that. We can easily get the import list and say, how many women in Ghana can produce this? I heard the UNDP person in Ghana ready to take us on. We are on a moving train already through Zora. And let us now come together, identify the flaws and reposition ourselves to be able to erase those flaws, constitute ourselves into a people of trust, have goodwill to all women, not necessarily our own level of women, because we have moved into a different category. The majority of the women are not in the category that are on this platform. What do we want to do with them? How do we want to go with them? What do they need? The percentage of what they need is probably 10% of the entire percentage of what people of high tech will need. but we start somewhere. We keep building them up from 10% to 15 to 20, and we make a difference in the creation of wealth. With women, when you make a difference with creation of wealth, you are going to improve the social status, not only in the country, but in the region, not only in the region, but across board. So it's a symbiotic, that's the word I'm looking for. It's a symbiotic relationship that we should look to building. Anytime a relationship is one-sided, it's not going to work. It is not going to work. Whether it's a developed world, it's developing world, it's underdeveloping, there must be a certain level of win-win. And so we're looking at opportunities that are symbiotic, and I want to leave this word there. And I also want to add to the word building trust, and I want to add to it again, goodwill. And I will stop at this point and say lastly that opportunities abound. They abound. So much within trade, industry, using technology. We can skill, we can coach, we can encourage, we can provide financing, we can also ensure we monitor and evaluate what we're doing so that our feedback system will allow people to be encouraged to do more. Thank you. Mary, thanks. Back to you.
Oh, as someone put in the comments, very powerful. Thank you so much, Dr. Shika. And I'm just going to summarize the impact that you have, if I may. The beginning with the conversations, the importance of trust, the importance of goodwill. And my paraphrasing was that mutual learning, right? And understanding that by empowering the women that we are working with along all the socioeconomic levels and along all of the different skill sets, we ourselves are learning and growing. And so I call that creation of wealth, not just economic wealth, but social wealth, right? And the network or the ecosystem wealth. So it's not just thinking of wealth in an economic sense, but in a community sense. And that is so important to the work that we're all doing, right? In female entrepreneurship and women's entrepreneurship and in entrepreneurship in general. And I thank you for the call to action and the symbiotic action for those of us in different aspects. You mentioned that you're working with the university. So we are different players in the ecosystem, the banking, the finance industry, the education industry, the entrepreneurs themselves. And when we come together with this communication and this trust level, this is when impact starts to happen. So thank you so much for those words.
Just quickly, sorry, Mary, I'm not working with the university, I'm just consulting. I mean, I'm a visiting lecturer. Thank you.
Yes, but that crossover, right? That intersectionality of the different ecosystem players. Very good, excellent.
Thank you.
If I may, I'd like to ask a few questions of you for a couple of minutes that we have, and then we're going to open it to the audience. And I see, Dr. McCauley, that you answered the one question that we had directly regarding applying for the 50,000, if you will. So thank you for sharing that with the National Science Foundation link to that.
Absolutely.
So I want to ask, if I can start with you, Dr. McCauley, what are some guiding principles that you might have for developing entrepreneurs or developing enterprises or this ecosystem that we've been talking about? Maybe some guiding principles that folks who want to take the action that Dr. Awosika is calling for can help us to guide that action.
Well, I think that number one is recognize that it is very possible to achieve your entrepreneurial ventures. I think oftentimes, particularly women, we talk ourselves out of it before we even get started. So start with a can-do mindset. And then secondly, identify those resources, some of which I mentioned, and I'm happy to share more, but then make a move. So we sit around and we think about it and we talk about it, but oftentimes that fear stops us. And so I just want to encourage us to make that move. And one of the things that's helped me is to have an accountability partner. So when you say you want to create or develop yourself as an entrepreneur or develop your entrepreneurial skills, have a friend or a mentor or a coworker that you share that with. And then give yourself, you can start small, 3 action items. One might be to just identify a LinkedIn course or a free online course to learn how to start a business or a business that you may be interested in. The second may be to complete the course and then write a paragraph, a vision statement for what you want your entrepreneurial endeavor to do. And the third might be to share it with 2 people. So give yourselves concrete action items, have an accountability partner, and then do it with a timeline. So if we don't add a timeline to things, I find they often end up in dreamland rather than becoming goals. But if we give ourselves a timeline, we're much more likely to achieve those things. So those are just some beginning steps I would encourage to develop yourself as an entrepreneur, and then being ready to step into an enterprise that you have so much can do today. You really can, ladies.
That's really, really helpful. I love that idea of accountability partners. And I think here in this network, we have an opportunity to reach out to each other, whether it's via LinkedIn or it's continued on the Zora Facebook conversation, to have those accountability partners. And you're absolutely, I love that you called out that risk taking, right? Because all of the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor, the GEM studies, and the global movement of women's entrepreneurs say, we have the self-efficacy. I believe I have the skills to be an entrepreneur.
Right.
However, I'm afraid of failure.
Right. And then there's no need to fear failure. The more successful you are, the more failures you're going to have. Let me tell you, we could sit down over a hot pot of coffee and I can talk about all the failures I have, but you learn from them. Every single time I did something and wasn't successful at it, I grew so much from it. And so I want us to get comfortable with that notion. And think about it. I mean, if you don't do anything, you're guaranteed not to fail. Would you rather have that position or say, I'm going to try this? And I guarantee you, there'll be 3 people standing right there to pick you up. And we are and listen, I'll be your accountability partner. My friends, they don't want me to be their accountability partner because I help them with the schedule. And I call and I email because we've got too much at stake, ladies. There's more opportunity today than there has ever been. Think about what Dr. Awosika just said about her bank wanting to invest in women. We got people wanting to invest in us. So honey, get you an accountability partner, get your 3 things and get moving.
Excellent. Thank you. Dr. Awosika, I wonder if you would like to comment on any of that, the guiding principles on developing entrepreneurs, developing ourselves as entrepreneurs, or maybe developing our enterprise or our ecosystem.
Thank you very much, Mary. I will talk about skills acquisition. It's so very important to be able to coach women. Many women, from my experience, lack the relevant skills to help them get better and better on their job. And this will require a bit of research into different businesses, and require skill. Are they available? Can they get them online? Can someone do it for them via Zoom and whatever? So skills is very important. Knowledge of the business that anyone is doing is very key. That you understand your business beyond your locality. Beyond now on this platform, is my business a needed material, or does it have any value chain that I can give to America as a start point? In other words, there are other industries in the US that will need what we can produce, and what you now need is skills to get them to the right standard, because nobody is going to buy from you when you have shea butter that does not meet the standard. You know what, I'm just giving that as an example. Nobody, we can produce a lot in sub-Saharan Africa of cassava, and nobody will want to buy starch from you that is not of pharmaceutical grade. So we have quite a lot of things. So I will zero down on skills, knowledge, strong partnership. strong partnership, which I listened to the co-speaker from Ghana who said, I wanted to meet the Afroism person, Orama. I spoke to Dr. Zizi and Zenzi Zillion, and I was able to speed up. And that's what this women platform is all about. Women have that trait, they don't hold back. The networking for women is very good because only very few women hold back. Many women are always ready to make available their contacts to be able to move things better. Now we should also try and build a network around ourselves, beyond our locality, beyond our sentiments, for the benefit of all. Thank you.
Excellent. Yes, that skill acquisition. And we were talking about shea butter. I think a lot about the right quality and the understanding of quality in our products and in our services and in our communications. And I would love to continue a conversation beyond today, right? And some work that I do from the Crummer Graduate School of Business. And I have predominantly worked in India and now working in Latin America, is around empowering women through education and entrepreneurship. And it's connecting, and Zenzi Dillon, who's on today's big, incredible planning task, I worked with her daughter and how we leverage the skills that the students have, right? The knowledge that the students are getting in the classroom and bring them into the field and part of female entrepreneurs to leverage the work that they're doing. So I love that. And part of that is talking about quality and talking about the skills in a formal and informal sense, but it also builds a lot of that trust. So I love that we're calling out so many really important ideas here. And I want to maybe ask another question, and Dr. McCauley, I'll come back to you if that's all right. We've talked a lot about making the connections, and Dr. Awosika has talked about, connecting Crummer with Lagos, which of course I'm all over that. But how do we create networks that are lasting? They're not just that one, oh, it's great to see you today, but that continuous connections between the Africa and the American women who are working to try to promote these entrepreneurial endeavors.
Well, I mean, I was thinking about that when I saw the question, and and I'm glad we're asking that question, because I think it's time for substantive collaborations that have a goal in mind. So because I remember last year when we all got together and I was so excited, and oftentimes we get fired up, but then we all leave and we go back to our respective jobs and responsibilities, and so nothing happens. And 12 months later, we come back and we're saying the same things. But I strongly encourage us not to let that happen this year. One of the ways I think that this can be done is, first of all, we have to have some structure around what we want to do. And we need to have an organization or a champion individual organization. And it doesn't hurt to have a little money, okay? So because it takes time and it's going to take some planning. So even a small amount of money, maybe a small seed funding of $5,000 or $10,000 that allows us to hire somebody who can help us develop a charter for an organization. What do we want to accomplish? I think we want to be a resource to facilitate collaborative endeavors between women in the US and women in Africa. Well, we can say between the US and Africa, but our emphasis being on connecting women for these collaborations. Mm-hmm. And then also have a process that we use to make that happen. And all of these things that I'm talking about are done every day in entrepreneurial and innovation ecosystems. So we don't even have to reinvent the wheel. So really understand, it's taking one of these models, getting a champion, getting a few people around us, a core team that would work together to accomplish this. And again, having some deadlines, setting some timelines. In 30 days, we want to have our first meeting. We could say that without any money. In 30 days, we want to bring this group back together. Maybe P.E.C can bring us back together in 30 days so we can begin, have a planning meeting. I'm more than happy to be on the planning team. Then look at where we can quickly get $5,000, $10,000 just so we can start to facilitate some of this. Create a charter, what we want to accomplish. How are we going to recruit people? How are we going to retain them? because it's easy to get people fired up, but being able to retain them in an environment, you have to create some value. So how do we create value for the participants? And how do we create value for those who are going to add additional resources to this? And so I think it's very doable. There are a number of models of how to facilitate collaboration, and even on virtual platforms and even internationally. And I always call it benchmarking. I say we come together in 30 days and we sit down as a group and we determine, how we want to move this forward. And I call it benchmarking. Let's look at 3 or 4 other organizations that have been effective at this and take the best of those strategies to create our own.
I love that call out. I hope P.E.C is hearing this, right? 30 days, 30 days. Let's see, I'm looking at my calendar. Today's January 28th, right? 30 days. Thank you for putting out that challenge. We need to do that to ourselves.
Absolutely.
Right? Structure, champions, process with the goal of creating value, right? And I join you in wanting very much to bring a lot of the work that I've been doing to the African continent. So I'm on board. Dr.
Awesome.
Shiko, what do you think?
I'm in total agreement. We start, doing the work. So we're going to work the talk, and it's a good way to start. And then everyone will be ready to put their hands on deck and make sure that we get somewhere. But I also will suggest that, the Secretariat will make like a timeline that is workable for everyone. So I will advise a proper consultation in order to make sure that it works out well. Thank you.
Yeah, and I want to emphasize something else that you're both, I think, hinting at or suggesting, is that momentum breeds momentum, and change takes time.
Yes.
Right. So, whether it's the snowball down the hill, since I'm originally not from Florida, right? So the snowball down the hill that gathers more and more strength and power and force, right? Or whatever analogy, for me, that's very visual right now, whatever analogy works for you. But without that momentum, without that initial push, right, then the snowball never starts and never goes. So again, thanks for that push, but also let's acknowledge that it takes time, right? So the work that I've been doing in Global Links, we're celebrating our 10th year, right? And if I look at what we've accomplished in 10 years, it's amazing. But if I look at each day, I can't see it, right? So keeping the short-term actions and the long-term goals and that creating value. So I want to thank you for that. What I'd like to do is, maybe we have some time, and I think I already know this, but I'm a professor. I think repetition is an okay thing. If you were going to take all of our listeners who are here today, all of our participants that are here today, who, again, I want to remind you, we're going to have some time for questions here, but if you were going to tell them, take today to support, what action would you encourage them to take today to support entrepreneurial development? What would that be? Let's start with Dr. Awosika, because I put Dr. McCarthy on the spot each time by starting with her. So let's start with Dr. Awosika.
Thank you. What I will say is, let's have a common database. Get a database of where you are now on the key areas that were spoken about today, and share your database with everyone so that we can have, data allows us to be able to move to the next step. Data in terms of the knowledge available, the skills you have, the financial advantage that is there, and the needs of the people around you, and the resources that are available, the skills that are, the technology that is local that you have, and what you will need in terms of external technology. Just a sort of framework of data is not exhaustive. You can add other columns as you think will benefit everyone. Now, when that data is formed from, for example, if I get that database from Nigeria, I can share it on the platform of the Africa American.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think that connects really well with what Dr. McCarthy is talking about. McCauley, excuse me, I've just changing your name randomly. I beg your pardon.
That's quite all right.
I get so excited. I do the same thing in class. I forget students' names completely because I get so excited. The idea of a database, and even, you know, we're making a call out to P.E.C, but look, we as a group, right, for the women's entrepreneurship and the African American, we can make a LinkedIn group and start to share that information and do, you talked about, Dr. McCauley, leveraging the technology that already exists, right?
Yes.
And so we can do that. Yeah, having information, having data, it's a wonderful, wonderful start. Thank you, Dr. Sugar. Let me come back to you, Dr. McCauley, if you have any thoughts before we go to questions.
Well, I love what Dr. Awosika is saying about database and really connecting. And I think that is making us accessible, becoming our own resource to one another. I think that's very powerful. If I could encourage everyone to do one thing today, it would be number one, if you feel like you have an interest in becoming an entrepreneur, take one step today, one step. And then also, let's be our sister's keeper. If you have a friend, a colleague, a coworker, a family member that you know has an interest in entrepreneurial endeavors, but they've never stepped out or made that move, reach out to them today and tell them, I see you achieving your entrepreneurial endeavors. Let me be your accountability partner and help you make that step. So I think if we do this, start to see a mind shift as a community, or a paradigm shift, if you will, because women and Black women, again, are starting businesses at higher rates than even men, but really being here for each other, understanding the level of businesses that we can have. We don't have to just have little mom and pop or the kitchen beautician kind of businesses. We can have major successful multi-million-dollar enterprises, but it is going to take us working together, collaborating, identifying those resources, helping each other identify funding sources. So really step out yourself and then be our sister's keeper, and let's help another woman step out and enter her entrepreneurial endeavors.
And I like that you repeated that challenge that you mentioned in your initial comments of that, because you're right. If I go back to the GEM studies, right, the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor studies, the businesses that women tend to start are ones that are very difficult to scale, right? So in other words, the salon or the, how did you call it? The
kitchen beautician.
The kitchen beautician, right? I like that. I'm going to borrow that. The kitchen beautician. But think bigger, right? Don't fear that failure. Think bigger. And when you were talking about failure and, you know, we have to fail in order to move forward, I love the statistic around Michael Jordan. It's like, let's stop talking about the points that he made. Let's talk about the shots that he missed. Because in order to make the number of shots he has made in the career, his career as a basketball player, he had to take them.
Exactly.
He did. And he didn't fear the miss.
Right.
And so through that repetition, our skills get better. So thinking about scale as well. Yeah, that was great. You know, there's a question in the question box, and I'm thinking that we've already addressed it, but I do just want to read it out and see if there's any comments that you want to add to it. The questioner is Deirdre Crumley, and she's asking, how might this forum, this African American Economic Forum, employ the internet to directly connect young women in Africa and the African diaspora in order to in order to strategize for personal growth and local community development?
Well, I think you mentioned we could start our own LinkedIn group. I mean, that's an infrastructure that's already there that we could use, and we may at some point want to develop our own personal system or platform. But today, there's a resource that allows us to do that. And so I think that's certainly one way to do it. And then, of course, looking forward, seeing, you know, what are the other ways that we can connect and make sure that we are creating those opportunities. And it's so important to me that we as more seasoned women are there for younger women to help them in these times, because clearly times are different for them. The challenges they face are different, but the opportunities are great. I mean, when I got my Ph.D. in engineering, people were going to a national lab or becoming a professor or trying to get in a major corporation. But today I have Ph.D. graduates that go out and start their own business. How fantastic is that? Take their dissertation concept and start their own business. And you don't have to have a Ph.D. to start a business. So really being there and helping our young women understand what the opportunities are and how to take advantage of it is so important. So I think one of the quickest ways is to start that LinkedIn group you mentioned, and then we can find out what other ways and what other resources we want to use to take our connection and our relationship further.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Dr. Shika, any additional thoughts?
Well, yes, my thought would be, because it's quite a wide group, the younger women, African American, is quite a wide group. So I think my thought process will be looking at the groups sectorally. So if there can be some kind of sectoral classification of the areas of interest. So perhaps the quick job that this platform will go on will be for people to register on the platform and indicate their areas of interest. And be able to classify them into sectors so that the sectors can quickly, if I want to get to Pamela, I know the sector she's in and I can quickly end. If I want to get to Mary, I just go on and that will help people. Otherwise it becomes so large and voluminous that we are a bit mixed up, and that's what I'll add to it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great.
Excellent.
And yep, we're going to have a comment here. Go ahead, sister.
Yeah.
All right. Am I on camera?
Yes,
All
ma'am.
right. All right. You all who have worked with P.E.C. know that we try to be a responsive organization, and Dr. McCauley and you have really called us out. So this is what I'm proposing, that on Thursday, the 18th of March, at 10 a.m. Eastern, that we reconvene. And I'm particularly asking, in terms of schedule, that you, Dr. McCauley, Zinzi Dillon, and Ms. Awosika, specifically, that you are available to participate, because I think that I believe personally in what we call the 7P principle. Very military, but it's prior, proper, planning, prevents, excuse my French, piss poor performance. Okay, that's where I am. And all of us are extremely busy. All of us are extremely busy, but we can get this done. I mean,
Absolutely.
actually, and Dr. McCauley being an industrial engineer, this is about systems. I mean,
Yes,
she's always
ma'am.
about structure, organization. Let us get a charter together. And I am certain that we can find a little bit more than $5,000 to $10,000, because we need to have we need to have at least a 3-year window of being able to get this, really get it structured.
Amen. I love it.
All right, this is eminently doable.
Yes.
Eminently doable. So I just wanted to say that we pick up the challenge. I'm asking these 4 women specifically, it's open to everyone, of course, but specifically the skill set that we need to really be able to go forward. Please check those calendars, Doctors McCauley and Conway, Dato-on, Zinzi Dillon, Ms. Zinzi Dillon, and Ms. Awosika. Please check those calendars for March the 18th, 10 a.m. Eastern. All right.
I'll put it on my calendar.
All right. Please allow
It's
90
there.
minutes if you can. We'll go with 1 hour if we must, but let's try allow ourselves 90 minutes. Please get back to me ASAP, and the LinkedIn will be ready within a week. We've got a top-notch. Oh yes, we're not playing here. We have a top-notch technical team that I'm privileged to work with.
Outstanding. I'm available, Mrs. Nathiri, March 18th, 10 a.m.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for the invitation. I'll get back to you. Please. I'm just checking it now. Thank you.
Excellent. And I want to emphasize something that Ms. Nathiri just said as she spoke. We talk about, it's part of entrepreneurship is not worrying excessively about where the resources will come from, but having the belief in what you're doing and moving forward. And again, that momentum actually often finds the resources for you, right? If I wait to act until the resources are there, right? It's a very, what do we say, like a vicious circle of never starting. At the same time, 3 years, so the program that I ran for the first 5 years, we ran on year to year a budget. So every year I had to wait to get approval for the next year. And everyone I worked with thought I was crazy. And Dr. McCauley, you know, this is not like many professors. I was like, don't worry about the money. I will find the money. Just keep working like we're
That's the
saying.
spirit.
Just keep moving forward like we know what we're doing. And then eventually we built enough early successes that we have now a 5-year window that gives us a little
Excellent.
breathing room. So when Ms. Athiri said, let's get 3 years, I think that's a beautiful, where we can prove some early concepts in that. And I already have in my mind 3 or 4 young female entrepreneurs from Africa who I'm going to reach out to and ask them to think about joining us. And some are in the education, in the education space. Some are, one just went through Rally, our social enterprise accelerator right here in Orlando and Winter Park. So I think that it's wonderful. We did get another question, kind of, I'm going to frame it as a question. It came through our chat, actually. It says, depending on the group of women and their current mindsets, determines your opportunity to move forward. Costs, trusts, leaders, what other ways to financially receive grants can you think about? So it's not quite a question. I'm forming it into a question a little bit live, but what other areas to receive support? So you mentioned resources before, Dr. McCauley. There are other areas.
Sure. Well, I mean, they're not. It depends on the entity. If it's a private enterprise, a business, or a nonprofit, or a university, so there will be different types of resources that you can pursue. I'm obviously very familiar with the National Science Foundation, as 90% of my research funding over the last 28 years has come from NSF. But there are also private foundation funding opportunities. And because women and entrepreneurial endeavors and innovation, and particularly women of color and collaboration, really are topics that are high yield items, there are a number of people that are willing to invest in that now. So it really just depends. I mean, if you look again at the National Science Foundation as a business, there's a Small Business Innovative Research Grant, or the Small Business Technology Transfer. So SBIR and STTR programs within NSF, and also 11 other federal agencies. Now, those require you to be a business and to be US based, but you don't have to only do business in the US. Private foundations, many private foundations will fund collaborative efforts. And oftentimes, though, they do expect for you to be either a nonprofit or a university. Once again, back to NSF. NSF has an Office of International Science and Engineering, OISE. And so I could see OISC being interested in funding the beginnings of a collaboration between women in the US for innovation, and particularly if you throw STEM in there, STEM focus collaborations with women in Nigeria. They have people, or women in Africa, and if you want to pick a country, since if we have a collaborator in Nigeria, because the way that the OISC office is set up is they have program directors that oversee each country, each of the international countries that participate. And so we could look at that as a means to get some seed funding to begin our efforts. So it's a sort of a broad question, but there are a number of opportunities available. As an individual, there are opportunities as well. So I'm happy to have that conversation. If whomever sent that would like to email me, I can be happy to chat further.
Okay. And Dr. Shikar, do you want to add anything to that? I have a few thoughts, but I want to defer to you first.
Yes, thank you. I want to add something. I've been thinking of recent that in early century and later, trade by barter was a very major system of getting people's who they don't use money. So, but trade by barter was based on trust as well as goodwill. So there's need for us to bring in, because money is available for many agents, but by the time you get to the prerequisites, it's perhaps very difficult to be able to reach that money. We need to be able to build in this trust. We need to be able to ascertain goodwill as part of our framework, that even if I don't have money to right away buy a supply, the women could trust that their products will be paid for when it's sent. So they sort of use the goodwill of this connectivity with trust to get their products out of the country, and they begin to have their seed money in.
Mm-hmm.
So we will not just limit it to funding support. We should also look for a way of designing the goodwill and the trust as similar to it. In fact, it still goes on in the eastern part of the world, Asian world. They still do a lot of trade by barter because they manage to be able to build trust. You need this, I'll give it to you, and you need this, I'll get it to you. I think Africa is positioned to be able to do a lot of that because the fiscal money is limited to the enormous trade that could take place if we introduce this kind of system. And I know in the oil industry in Nigeria, we do it. We pay back some of the things that we get with oil. The country needs oil, and so we give them oil outside the normal trade that they do with oil. So it can happen with any other material. It could be mineral, it could be whatever. But I just think that we should think a lot on those systems and try to build two monetary systems, trust and goodwill economy, as well as the financial economy.
Mm-hmm. I love that you're bringing out that idea of barter.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I want to call out to the younger generation, right? If we want to call them millennials or anything like this, because I think they are teaching us a lot more about that. So they are using the technology, whether it's in local groups, to keep things out of the disposal, right? So look, I have this in my house and I'm moving that, and they're setting up platforms in order to enable that barter to happen, which is helpful to each of the parties. And my son and his wife started a business, and the first things that they started doing is saying, okay, let me barter for that. I can't afford to buy what but this is the skill set I have, that's the skill set you have. And so just putting that out there, I've learned a lot from observing the younger people to do that, right? So whether I want to call them millennials or whatever group I want to put them into. So thanks for calling that out, Dr. Awosika. That's very important. I'm going to add one more item right here. We talked about funding, and that's impact investing. And so some of the work that I've been doing is connecting the micro entrepreneurs, the female micro entrepreneurs, and getting them ready to have a conversation with impact investors. So some of that is as simple as moving them into the formal economy, because let's talk about that in some of the emerging markets, right? We need to move into the formal economy before we can become available to some of the resources, whether it's from the banking resources that you're representing today, or from the US government, right? So some of my funding comes from the Department of State as well. But first, moving them into the formal sector, and then helping them and preparing the entrepreneurs to present themselves as a viable business for investment and into a patient capital. So I again, I call out to the audience that's here with us today and say, who's ready to be a patient capitalist, right? Who's ready to be a patient investor? Meaning, I'm not expecting my ROI to come in 1 year and add X%. Instead, I want to invest in a business that is creating economic wealth, social wealth, community development. And I realize that that's going to take some time. So this is where I'm starting to move more and more. First was developing the confidence in the women's businesses, and now preparing the women. And again, leveraging the asset of the students and the knowledge that the students are getting in the classroom to prepare the entrepreneurs for those conversations. And we're starting to see some leverage around that. Right. Any thoughts or reactions from that? We have one more question in the chat, and we've got about 3 or 4 more minutes that came through. And Joanne is asking, the funding that is available for women nonprofit organizations that help urban communities, help teach skills, mindset, values, where can you find the data? I have a thought for that, but again, I want to defer to you all and see if you have any thoughts.
Well, I mean, I certainly, there are a number of private foundations that fund nonprofits, but also many federal agencies. I mean, if you're talking education related skills and mindset, you might look at opportunities with the Department of Education. Again, I don't mean to only be in the federal space, but that's where I've had most of my experience. But I think that there are a number of private foundations that are interested in funding things such as this. I am a mean Google searcher. So, you know, you say, where can you find the data? I mean, if you spend half an hour with a few keywords, and of course, you're going to come across a bunch of ads at first, but wade through those and to actually get to some of those sources, foundations, as well as federal agencies, and then other organizations that may be looking for partners who are doing what you're doing. So Dr. Muriel, let you share your thoughts on that.
Yeah. And I love that you said you can sort of do that organic search right through Google, but also whenever you can use the step to take the next, like I think of those little kids at the restroom, right in the bathroom, they need that little step to get to the sink to wash their hands, is that start with a foundation or start with USAID, right, at the federal level, or start with the Kauffman Foundation. And what you'll also find is that you can get on some listservs, right? So where they are actually sending you information, right? So if you register for a few very reputable nonprofits here in Florida, of course, we have the Central Florida Foundation, but within the countries as well, the different national levels at the countries, but I would use the organizations that are already doing this. So think of the big foundations, go to their website, get on their listserv, and they will start to send to you. Also for nonprofits, there's something called Board Source, which is like board of directors, board source, and they send a lot of information. And of course, I want to ask you to think about the universities that are in the areas that you're working on, because many of them have grants offices, and you've got professors who are looking for community activated research or engaged scholarship opportunities where they want to work with nonprofits to leverage the work that they're doing. And so by combining with some academic work, some of the granting can come as well. Dr. Awosika, do you have anything you want to add to that?
No, you said it all, really, to be honest.
Cool.
you said it all, and I agree. Yes, those line of thoughts are very apt at this point in time as a start point for any one of them that want to move on. Yeah, there.
Okay, great. And a comment came through the chat, and you know, thanking us for marking our calendars, but I just want to correct the chat because it did go out to all the attendees, at least how I marked my calendar. Dr. McCauley, did you mark your calendar for March 18th?
March 18th, yes.
1/8, right. Yeah, that one
have
says 28, right, in the chat. So I just wanted to call that out because we're online for the 18th. No delaying for 10 more days.
Right, exactly.
Right. And someone mentioned also the Foundation Center as a resource for those nonprofits. So we have about 1 minute to wrap up. So I want to just give each of our panelists, you know, a kind of 30 seconds. Do you have any final thoughts from this conversation that we've had in the last hour, or any departing words that you would like to give our audience? Sorry, Dr. McCauley, would you like to start?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't. I'm sitting here waiting for everybody to respond. No, this has been absolutely delightful. I am I love to talk, but I like action more. And I love that we are walking away from this event with a plan and already have something on the calendar. So I am 100% committed and enthusiastic to seeing something substantive come from this group. I think a small group can impact so many. One of my favorite scriptures is one can take 1,000, but two can take 10,000. So imagine what we can do if we come together, ladies. So I look forward to our collaboration, to us being a resource for each other, and women we haven't even begun to meet. So thank you so much for the opportunity to be here.
Excellent, thank you. Dr. Awosika, any final close? We have about 30 seconds.
Yes, thank you. I want to thank everyone for listening. And also I want to thank everyone, I believe, for making up their mind to join the train. If you want to go by train, that's a different speed. Some will go by the plane. Please join whichever vehicle you want to go, but make sure you join. And the time is now. Thanks for the invitation and thanks for listening.
And thank you both for taking the time to be in the panels, for allowing me the opportunity to meet with you and generate some conversation. I'm just very excited. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to our lovely panel from the Eatonville and the Zora Festival, P.E.C. Thank you so much.
And thank you, Dr. Mary. It's a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mary. Thank you, Dr. Awosika and Dr. Pamela. Wow, what a powerful session. Very concrete actions going forward. We definitely will take through all those actions. The March the 18th, I would like to highlight that March is a year for women. It's a month for women. So I believe it's the right month. We probably just need to finalize on the date, going back to the door of our return. So we'll definitely confirm the 18th of March offline. But thank you so much for the great work. We are going to take a 5 minutes break, and then we'll be back for the digital economy, which is our last panel discussion. Thank you again to the wonderful team and the panel. Rich conversations. God bless you.